afternoon, ladies. Thank you for being here. So, we've been invited by Church After Hours to serve as an all female panel to discuss relationships. I believe it's a three-part series. The first part was taped last week where the brothers gave their robust and interesting commentary. It aired yesterday. Today is us. We're part two. And if I'm not mistaken, they probably are reaching out to us and we'll try to come back together, both groups, men and women, and have a collective conversation, which should be very colorful. Before we start, does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to go through the questions and just randomly pick people to start, but everyone will get a chance to answer all of the questions that Church of the Hours have presented to us. Any
Okay, sounds
questions?
good.
No? All right. So the first question, Tamala, we'll start with you. You are bright and cheery with the
Okay,
red.
okay.
Um, so tell us a little bit about your relationship history and your current relationship status.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, let's see. Relationship history. I guess I really considered myself a dater.
Hmm.
I've never been married. I've had a couple of long-term relationships. I'm currently in. I think my longest term relationship I've had. My partner and I have been together for 13 years, which
Hmm.
is crazy how fast time goes. And we are not married, but have been in connection to one another for 13 years.
Sharmia, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Sharmia. My relationship history, I've been married twice, divorced, um, and currently dating. We've been dating for 4 years. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. And Shanika, what about you, ma'am?
I had I'm currently married.
Hmm.
Met my husband in '96, married in 2000. So together 28 years, married going on 24 years.
Okay.
Only probably one serious relationship prior to that.
Okay. Myself, I'm currently married. This is my second marriage. My first marriage, I think I met my ex-husband when I was 20, just getting out of the military. We met at the reserves and we dated for 7 years, of which one of those years we cohabitated. We were married for 9 years and divorced after 17 years. I took a 2-year hiatus. Um, and I met my current husband on a blind date through a friend, and we dated 6 months before we were engaged, 2 years before we were married. So we've been together a total of 15 years, but we've been married for 13 years. So that's my status. So we all have kind of interesting backgrounds about dating.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So let's go to question number two. Now that we got the little introduction and the that part out of the way, um, let's start with you, Shanika. What do you expect out of a relationship?
Hmm. Um, I don't think there's enough time for me to
I know that's right.
explain my expectations. At
Mhm.
this stage, and the things that I have, I will say we, because he's tolerated me as I've tolerated him. At this stage, I expect that we be honest and upfront with each other. Uh, Make sure that we show affection.
Mhm.
Definitely no cheating.
Mhm.
Make sure that we not only nurture each other, but our family, because we have grown children and 3 grandchildren.
Mhm.
um, and just make sure that we stay together. For a while, there was no togetherness. I felt like we were just
Mhm.
roommates, paying bills together and passing through the night. And if the urge came to do whatever, we did, and then we went on about our business. But I
Mhm.
think our relationship is turning back full circle to when we met. So, and I also think the communication is the key.
I think, that hearing that is just a testament to confirm that relationships are hard and a lot of work. They're very dynamic. We
Mhm.
have an ideal and then we have reality, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes,
because they
Um,
don't follow that straight line.
not
It's
at
you
all.
up and you down and you.
I said
It's
one of the
all.
worst things I think that my mother could have done, and no harm to her, God bless her soul, is read fairy tale stories to me. That was the worst thing I think a girl can have is
Mm.
fairy tale story. There is no Prince Charming on a white horse to ever
Yeah.
come save your day.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, mom.
You
And I
know.
think I did that with my girls too.
Uh-huh. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, what about you, Sharmia? What do you think? As far as what do you expect out of a relationship?
Um, a lot. Just because I've been through so much,
Yes.
with the divorces. So I mean, peace is number one.
Mm.
Yes.
And just like Shanika was saying, just open relationship. We have date night because I have older kids and younger kids. So
Mhm.
sometimes you need a break where,
Mhm.
it's just adults and, maybe out of town or out to eat. So
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Tamala, you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my answer probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago would probably be very different than what it is now. And especially
Absolutely.
being in relationship and in connection in your 50s and also in
Mm.
your, mid to late 50s, it's
Mhm.
very different.
Mm-hmm.
Peace for sure is the first thing that comes to mind. And what you both said really resonates. And not only really pouring into each other, but also just remembering to do that for yourself. And I think
Mhm.
just especially I think just in this stage of life, it lends itself to a lot of reflection
Mhm.
and thinking about things you still want to do, either as a couple, but also separately, because there are a lot of things that I want to do for myself that would be, separate from my partner.
Mhm.
And just really leaning on that. It's important to have that sense of independence
Mhm.
is important. There has to be those, of course, collective interests, but also have those separate interests as well. Being able to travel separately, have friends separately. I think that is really important to be able to keep your identity. And I think the last couple of years really leaning in more to better realize what it is I need. Because it's interesting what you were saying, Val and I've known each other for
Girl.
long time.
Right.
And I think just, sharing over the years and just knowing how our mothers raised us to be. Whereas I was, I think I'm the oldest of my parents' 3 children. And I was the fairy tale kid, and my mother was the realist. Because she would always say, "Honey, the fairy tale ain't coming. That white horse,
It's dead.
he might come pulling a wagon. He might be on some roller skates with one broken wheel." And
Right.
saying it's not always going to be what you expect it to be,
right.
Mhm.
but made it very clear you walk your own path. It doesn't always have to look the traditional way.
Hmm.
And just be sure at the end of the day you can always take care of yourself. So I think a lot of times she definitely gave a message that was very different
Mhm.
than what I think a lot of my friends growing up with their parents were telling them, because that was their reality. But I know it just came from what she, I think, saw in marriage and connected relationships growing up, and also in her relationship and connection to our father.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think, like for me, all of you ladies pretty much hit things on the nail on the head for things that resonate with me as well. Definitely honesty, even if the honesty hurts my feelings, or even if it disappoints me, or even if it offends me. If I ask for honesty, I want you to give it to me. I am not one of those people who will punish you, for that. But I've had in my dating experiences, men don't believe me. They don't believe me. They think that I'm just saying that to get the information or whatever. And then I guess they believe I'll spaz out, but I've never spazzed out. I don't have a history of spazzing out. So I don't understand that part. So for me, I would like to have what's important to me is that my partner has a level of responsibility and openness and the willingness to grow. And because my relationships today look different than my relationships of yesteryear, I need evolving communication. The way we spoke when we first met is not the way we communicating 17 years differently, because you're different, I'm different. Life's been happening, and we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's just not like, oh my God, I just love him. You know, there are days when I don't like him, and I'm sure there's days he doesn't like me,
Yes.
right? So to be able to work through that and to communicate with that, I need to feel respected on all
Mhm.
levels, and I have to be a priority. If I'm not a priority, I
Yeah.
have to exit stage left immediately.
Mhm.
It's taken me a long time to get to the point to where I love me more than I love anybody.
Yes,
So
indeed.
when I'm
Right.
not feeling a certain way, I gotta go, because I can't go back and revert, to being the people pleaser that I was and putting myself second. I have to be first, because I can't do for you if I'm not fulfilled, whole, and complete, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to feel protected, like emotionally and physically. There are
Mhm.
moments, not a lot, but I have some vulnerable points. And when they come out, I need to know that you're there, you understand, you my rock, you can comfort me, you can encourage me. Most times I can encourage myself, but every now and then the extra cheerleader on the side is not a bad thing,
Right.
So I would like
Right.
to have that mutual respect. Just the things that you guys said, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of like saying the same things, just maybe
Mhm.
adding a little bit more to it.
Yeah, and
But
it's interesting, and I everything you said definitely resonated, and I felt connected to it. But really, that piece of that self love and really knowing what it is that you want, need, and deserve, and a lot of that, at least for me, it really originated from, I think, our space and place and our birth order in our families,
absolutely.
how and that played a really big part. And just to be transparent, I think just my therapy journey over the last couple of years has really opened a lot of doors and given me a lot of awarenesses where I really put myself in a box on the back shelf and kind of felt guilty about really sharing what it is I need and want from connections and relationships. Because just in my maternal connection, expressing that from my mother was viewed as a sign of weakness. And again, no shame to her, God rest her soul, but in learning more about her in her family line and her connection to her mother, she had to put on that tough exterior, and you don't show those things. And if you kind of put yourself first, that's really a sign of being selfish. And you really have to care for others. And I think also just being the oldest, the first girl and the oldest, you naturally get into that space of being the caretaker. And finally getting in doing that in so many ways, in a lot of your romantic relationships, familiar relationships, and even in some of your friendship relationships. And then after a while, once you kind of realize, okay, I'm deserving of kind of leaning in and making myself the priority and maybe distancing from relationships, it can sometimes cause friction in relationships because it's, oh my gosh, I got fireworks behind
I
me.
know that was just flashing.
And
That was right on time.
yeah, and sometimes it's difficult to put your wants and put your needs first. Because I just being clear, like saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Because one thing I can say, at least this last probably 9 months to a year, I'm trying to be impeccable with my words, but more importantly, really speaking the truth about what it is I want, need, and won't tolerate. And just even in my relationship, in doing that, and and like you said, some days you love them, some days you want to put them in a plastic bag and tie them up in the basement. And just hearing the thought, well, you've changed. And I thought about that, but I was like, I should, just like you should. Because if we're still, if I'm still in the same space I was
something
at 30, at 55, when I was 35, I'm doing something wrong. That there should be this evolution and this changing. And like you said, Val, in communication, what got me at the beginning of the relationship is
That's
not
not gonna
going to
hold me
keep me
today.
13
Mhm.
years, 17
Mhm.
years, 28
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
It's not going to fly.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
going to take something different.
You
Mhm.
brought up a couple of good things that's kind of going to shift me a little bit from
Mm-hmm.
the scripted questions, if you will. But I
Yeah.
think that those were some good points. And if Sharmia and Shanika doesn't mind, what is your birth order place? Where are you with your siblings? Are you first, second, the only boy, girl? Where are you?
I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl.
Mm.
What
I'm the
about you?
oldest and the only girl as well.
Oh my God,
I
that is
think
so
I'm the old.
crazy.
We're the oldest grandchild too, right, Shanika? Are
Yeah.
you the oldest grandchild? Yeah, I'm
Yes.
the oldest grandchild too.
I'm the
Mhm.
Wow.
oldest. Am I the oldest? No, I'm the oldest surviving one now. I had a cousin that passed away,
Mm.
but that's
Mhm.
that's very interesting to me
Mhm.
because I'm the oldest and the only girl. There's a huge
Mhm.
difference between my brothers. I had three brothers. I have two now. Between myself and them, 9 years
Mhm.
between myself and the one that passed, and then 8 years between myself and the twins. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because I've been a caregiver and caretaker my entire life.
Whew.
And it comes from at one point when my mother had to go back to work, I became the kid that took care of their brothers. You know, the
Mhm.
neighborhood knew me as little mama because I had a baby on my hip, a baby on my hand, a baby in the stroller, you know. So I always had my brothers with me, and I've always been taught like to take care of them and to take care of everybody else. I
Mhm.
was never the subject, but at the same time, my mother, you know, mothers love daughters and sons differently. So my mother, when my brothers came, it's like my nurturing stopped and I
Mm.
became this little adult. And because she said they needed her differently. And what's interesting is she started handling me a little differently. And I realized later in life it was because her sisters were in abusive relationships. And she was determined that her child would not fall victim to any of that. So
Mhm.
although I was a caretaker, that independent thing that she put in me, it's like a hard thing for me to balance when I was dating because I would
Mm.
meet men and I wasn't needy enough and I
Yep.
didn't know what that
Mhm.
meant. It
Yeah.
is hard for me to ask you for something. It's hard.
Mhm.
Chances are I never would ask, and I was quiet my entire first marriage. I never expressed anything that I like and I wanted because I thought, you know, it was desirable for me to be quiet, don't nag him, you know,
Mhm.
give him peace when he comes home and just put yourself second. Merge yourself into his world, even though he never merged himself into my world, you know?
Mm.
So I think
Mm.
that that's
Mm.
interesting. And because of the birth order and because I was the only girl, you know,
Mhm.
everything was a little bit different. I think that's a connection that I'm kind of hearing and feeling
Oh
with the
yeah.
responses. Like we're all saying the same thing, maybe a few different words, but it's all kind of overlapping. And I think that even though two of us are familiar and then the other two are familiar, but we're not
Mm.
all, we all four don't know each other, I do feel that there is a connection
A
that's kind
connection
of tying us
indeed.
together, and our experiences definitely are, you know, mirroring or similar. We
Hmm.
have different you
Hmm.
know, different stories to tell about growing up and stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
And I
So I
Yeah.
think
mean,
that's
Val,
interesting.
if I could say
Yeah.
something to take it another step further, I don't know what each person as far as the household. I was raised just my mom.
Okay,
So
we
with you
actually gonna
saying,
get to that.
yeah, and with you saying that, and with me meeting guys, I was always like, no, I don't, I can do it myself. I can do
Mhm.
it, I don't need,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. My mother definitely raised me that way. But here's the funny thing. My father, I'm a two-parent home. My father, old school Mississippi dude, right? From back in the day. And he was, you know, the man and the man. But like I remember my dad, he was a bowler. And I say, Daddy, take me bowling. No, 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 because men didn't handle girls. He's like, no, because you gotta go to the bathroom. What am I gonna do? I'm like, I can go by myself, Daddy. But he wouldn't take me, right? He took his sons. I said, Daddy, show me how to change a flat tire. My father's response to me, you don't need to know that. You'll always have a man somewhere to take care of you.
Mm.
I was just like, well, when I was single and men said I wasn't needy enough, I said, you said, I remember I was on the side of the road of the Eisenhower, I-290. I had a flat tire. My father lived in Mississippi. At that time, they had moved back to Mississippi. I can't believe I did that. And I was on the side of the road, the Eisenhower. I had a flat tire. a blowout, and I called my daddy crying. You said I would always have a man, and I'm on this expressway by myself. I was like, I told you to teach me how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's as independent as I was still kind of taught to stay in a certain lane and in my
Mhm.
place as well.
Right.
So it's I had dual messages in my household.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's so
Very
interesting because what's the saying that, mothers, I think Black mothers raise their
Love their-
daughters but love their sons.
They love that song and raise their daughters.
And
Yes.
and I definitely saw that because it's me, my brother is 4 years under me, and then our sister is 4 years under him. And I just remember seeing it once he started coming of age, just really the stark difference. And more specifically, when I ended up leaving and going to New Orleans for undergrad. And I always worked. I mean, we came from a working class family, so I had a job from freshman year to senior year. You want to go to school, you got to work, because they had very little to contribute.
Mhm.
And so I was on the streetcar or walking or catching a bus, and sometimes we'd be coming back late at night. And I just remember asking, can you maybe help me get like a little beater car, something, just something to get me from point A to point B. And my mother saying, this is going to teach you character. And I'm thinking, ma'am,
Yes.
this is not the character lesson I need. Where I'm walking 11 o'clock at night trying to get back to the dorm, walking 2 and 3 miles. And I remember when my brother got old enough to drive and got his license, and she called me so happy. We just bought your brother a car.
Mm.
I literally remember the feeling today. But her thing, well, we have to be sure he's a boy. We have to be sure that he gets from point A to point B separately. And I'm thinking, ma'am, I am in Louisiana and y'all are here in the Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so far away from home. But again, it was that lesson. And her thing, want you to be sure you can take care of yourself, because she always used to tell me, I would never raise you to be a damsel in distress.
Mm.
And it's interesting now, because sometimes when I'm in connection or meeting women where that is maybe their persona, that I view them as being damsel in distress, it's so triggering to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to give more grace and be softer and just understand, how we were raised was very differently. How we interact is beneficial to us one way or the other. And their story is not my story, and vice versa. But it also, like you all were saying, being in relationships, I've heard in every dating or serious relationship, and even when Chris and I, when we first started dating, it was always, you act like you don't need me.
Mm.
And I remember saying, I don't need you. I mean, I want you, but I don't need you. Like, I was surviving and doing okay prior to us ever crossing paths. But then also knowing with the male energy, there is that need and that want to protect. And I think I just was in that headspace of being a woman always in need of protection would make me, I don't know, just make me appear weak.
Mm. That's interesting. That's interesting. I want to put a pin in that, not because it's not good, because it is. There's so many ways we can go from that. But we have another question that'll be coming up that'll kind of touch it a little bit. So I just want to put a little pin there and just navigate towards the third question. So we talked a little bit about our background, our relationship status, and we kind of we brought in our birth order and how we are in our family structure, and maybe how that looks and how that has possibly affected our abilities to function in relationships, or maybe even obtain relationships, depending on how your partner sees you and you see them. So the next question is, who do you attract and who are you attracted to? Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So, and I'll switch the order around.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, who prior to my husband, who I was attracted to,
Yes.
Was more than likely somebody that would be considered street, a hood guy. I like that rough, that jagged edge.
I get it.
That,
Yes.
that protector.
It is sexy. It
Um,
was sexy at that
yeah.
stage. Yes.
And I was always attracted to bigger guys, because I'm a bigger woman, but
Okay.
tall, bigger men, because they were protective. And what
Yes.
I've learned over the years was that, looking back, my father is a tall, bigger man,
Mhm.
or was a tall, bigger man. He's not quite as big as he used to be. So that's what I was attracted to, not realizing that what I wanted wasn't always what I needed.
Yes.
And
That part.
Yes, I paid a steep consequence for one of those men, long-term relationship, abuse, and got out of it, and then looked back like, oh my God, I don't have him. I even made the comment once, no one's ever loved me like he did. And
Yeah.
and the minute I said it out loud, my conscience said, did you hear what you just said?
Mm.
You've experienced all this physical abuse
Mhm.
from this person. They left you for someone else, yet you can still relate his love, because he was more, I'm trying to think of a good word, not as negative of a word. He was very possessive. That's the
Mhm.
best way I can put it. But to me, someone who felt like an ugly duckling growing up, that was just more love. Like, you just wanted me, but he was trying to satisfy his own need as well. So
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
minute I realized that I could relate him to being the best love I've ever had, and even in comparison to my husband, I knew that I had an issue that needed more than just me talking myself down off of a leg. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's what I was attracted to. Again, God doesn't give us what we want. He gives us what we need.
Come on.
My husband is my husband ran with all the, the dope men. But he didn't get to go that route. His parents
Yes.
pushed him to football. So he's straight edge, not even 3 drops of thug in him. And I love him for that.
Mhm.
Because whether there's an attraction there for his lack of thugness or whatever or not, he showing me that someone can still love me and not be the type of person that I thought I needed.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for your transparency and openness. I
Absolutely. Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I forgot to say in the beginning, and forgive me for not, that this is a safe place, non-judgmental, and I just wanted everybody to be transparent. But apparently, we already knew that, so we're here opening
Yes,
up and sharing
indeed.
our experiences. So thank you for that.
Are you welcome?
I think, so that's who you were, and then the difference is, it's still a little similarity in that your husband still has the size and that character of the protector, but without the abusive part with it.
Without the abuse, without the street knowledge, knowing
Yes,
what is
yes,
over his head. And I'm like,
yes.
I'm more thug than you, but it's okay. That's why God put
I
us together.
love that. I
Yes,
love
but
that.
yeah,
I think that
again,
was good how you did it from the past. Now, back in the day, like when I was first getting boyfriends and stuff. Oh my God. And I hope that, I don't go to jail and people don't shoot or whatever. But I used to, it was gangs in Chicago. It was folks, and then it was the vice lords. So I used to love some folks, right? But my folks, my parents wasn't having none of that. So I used to love that gang banging thing. I've always liked that. So what it did, it morphed into a person, a man that has that code switch. So he can be in the streets if he needed to be, or he can protect me in the streets, but I can also take him to like my corporate events, and he can blend into that as well. And one of my friends, she told me, I never put it together. She said, "You like angry black men." And I was like, "What does that mean?" She said, "Every time you see a man and you just lose your mind or you think whatever, he has this very similar look. For me, he was tall, muscular, and big. I'm 5 feet, so I just like a big man to just be all around my space, right? But in my head, I'm 5'7", but I'm 5 feet in reality.
Or 6 feet, depending on the
6
day.
feet, depending on the time of the day, right? And I like brothers who noses spread across their face. I like real African features, the lips, the nose. That's the way that they walk. It's something about that, locks, bald head. I don't care. A nice beard. It's just something about a black man that looks like a black man that's masculine. And I hate that the word toxic masculinity was developed or sometimes overused, because I like a manly man. I don't want my man's masculinity to ever be questionable by me or anybody else. Every man that I have dated and married, when we go somewhere and people, I've had instances where I was in a situation and the guy might have been getting out the box a little bit. Like one time I was in a UPS store and this old lady behind me was like, excuse me. I was like, yes, ma'am. She said, you with this guy over here? I'm like, no, I don't know him. She said, baby, he taking pictures of your butt. I said, what? She said, he's taking pictures of your butt. So I turned around and, I addressed him. I'm like, excuse me, are you taking pictures of me? And I can tell by the way he changed his position. Okay, he one of them brothers that's gonna be like, she a female, I can beat her. Even though she came to me respectfully,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go ahead and check it. But what he don't know, I had already texted my husband, 911, come inside. Because I kind of felt like it could go any way. So when my husband came inside the store, I held my hand up at the door because him and I were conversing. And out of nowhere, he just felt like he just wanted to leap like a frog, right? And I said, before you do that, I said, baby, let me explain to you what I'm talking to this man about. And he completely just became subdued and submissive and let it go. So I like a man that's gonna come and stand in my place or stand in lieu of me when somebody is disrespecting me or about to
Mhm.
disrespect me.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
important to me. So I've always loved that. I've always liked dark skin, blue, black, purple, midnight. Always. Always. The blacker they are, the better they are for me. I just want to see your teeth and the white of your eyes. I mean, I want you to be dark, dark, dark. I love that. That's so beautiful to me. It's like seeing God in the flesh when I see brothers like that. Back in the day, I used to like the jeans and the Timberlands at New York.
Come
I used to
on.
think that I was an East Coast girl in my soul. So I tried to move to the East Coast, but ended up coming back to the Midwest. I was like, my man is on the East Coast. I like them kind of brothers that kind of move and sway like that and just got all of that masculinity. But what I realized as an adult, and I'm a true advocate of therapy, like Tamala, my therapist has brought a lot of things home for me. All I was really doing was dating my father. My perception of my father was this giant man. My dad used to go up, oh my God, go up to my mother's job if her boss yelled at her, and he would defend her. And that man never yelled at my mother again. And she did not get fired because he told her he better not fire her. My dad came up to my job. I had a sexual harassment thing. I was a teenager and I was so scared. I just wanted to quit the job and they wouldn't let me quit it. And my dad went up there and he said, point him out. And I was like, oh, daddy, please, can we just go? He was like, point him out. And I'm in there like, oh my God, my dad gonna go to jail. I ain't gonna never see him again. I was 16, 17. I pointed him out. I don't know what happened to Mr. Perez. I really don't know, And it was another thing with the neighbor. My mama packed me up and took me to her best friend's house. I was there for 3 days. When I came back, the whole neighborhood was different. I don't know. But it's something about that message, that quiet message that I saw from my father that made me pick men, my perception of what masculinity was, that James Evans kind of masculinity.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize till I became an adult. My daddy's so little. He about 5'8". He was
He
165
sure
pounds. But when my daddy spoke when I was a kid, baby,
Mm.
that whole house trembled and went quiet. So for
Mhm.
me, it's the same in the sense of I like the strength of a real strong black man, but like my sister said here, I don't want it to be abusive because I have dated
Yeah.
a guy that was possessive in the military, and I had to call the police on him because that just got ridiculous. So I would never go to the point to where I'm mistreated, but I definitely do like to know if I walk into a place and something go down. I ain't gonna be the only one fighting if it gotta happen. Don't let me
Right.
be the one fighting and you holding my purse. What you doing? Let's all get in this fight or you fight for me and protect me. So protection is huge because I just saw that in my father. And I think that's why it's so high on my priority list.
Yeah. It's so interesting just how, I think who we see in the home, and just in our family lineage and just how that really pours into, who we feel that attraction to. Because it was really interesting in our home. My father was the more quiet one. My mother would pop off like a damn firecracker at any minute. But strength and protection in his quietness. And I think now, like, I like an ease in a personality. But then my maternal grandfather, you know, blue black, he was 6'4". He was, you know, he would come in moving furniture if he thought somebody was hurting someone in his family, because Albert came with the power.
Mm.
And it's interesting. I think a lot of what I think really desire to have now is really kind of a mix of the two. I think definitely in thinking back now, and it's so interesting hearing you all talk about this. And then Shanika, just with you describing just kind of the physicality that you want. And I think a lot of the men that I have tended to date, and even the one I'm with now, their height definitely reflected more of my grandfather, kind of that tall, 6'2", 6'4", just kind of that more imposing physical frame was something I always gravitated to. And I think I've always dated darker skinned men. And I think that's just probably another story for another day. I think just me with self-acceptance, showing up in the world as a lighter skinned woman, and just feeling a lot of times I had to prove my blackness. So again, that's probably another story for another day. But compared to where I was when I was younger, definitely like you, Val, and definitely like you, Shanika, I wanted the street boys. And I think a lot of it was, I grew up working in my family's corner store. So I was with my mother, with my grandfather, with my cousins, like all the time. Like I was not a kid that could, join clubs and stuff. So everything, I just really followed this straight line most of my life. So I think some of it, I wanted to walk on the wild side. And, I really wanted a lot of that excitement. So definitely dated, I dated guys in the street. And when I left here and went away to college, like you, Val, I was convinced my husband is from New York. I went through this period of life where I only dated men from the Bronx with that heavy accent. Tim's, you gotta have a roughneck. I wanted that was my goal in life, was to have that roughneck. And, but then things kind of shifted because was in a longer term relationship, with that kind of roughneck personality. And it was, it wasn't good. It was, very emotionally abusive, very verbally abusive, and then started to kind of tip into physical abuse. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that. But now it really is just kind of finding that balance, definitely wanting the protector, but also wanting that ease, and be able to now be in a space where I can be soft. And I think just with the work, I do every day, I think just being, like in a senior management position, you're always putting out fires, you're always fixing, taking on people's problems, fixing stuff all day. And just when you come in and you close the door, just really wanting that ease and just kind of that softness. Because as Black women, we don't always have that space and opportunity provided for us to be able to have that soft life.
That is
where we've got to navigate 17 things at one time. You fixing, the partner, the husband's problems. You got kids, you fixing their problems. The brother that then fell off track, you fixing stuff for him, and you never have time to be able to take care of yourself. And just being able to really have that sense of safety. And also humor is a huge thing. Like you have to make me laugh. I have to be able to let my guard down, because I've realized just in therapy, I guess I didn't realize how tightly wound I've been for so long, where I've not always been able to just relax, relate, release, and just really be myself. And I feel now, like at this point in my life, I'm finally starting to get there where I'm feeling that level of comfortability, and just knowing that it is okay to be able to, be able to let your shoulders down. You don't always have to be tight and on a mission. And it's just important to be able to have someone to walk alongside you on that journey. And again, not knowing not every day is going to be perfect. They're going to push our buttons, but those are just some of the things that I feel I need at this point in my life.
Samia?
Attracted to like everyone mimicked the bad boy, loud music, fast money. And now that I look back, I'm wondering, like, was it, the mother and the daughter, the clash and trying to make my mom mad, or
That's funny.
but yeah, the thugged out guys.
Yeah, it was something about him. It was something about him. It was something about him. Like, what about now? Like, what are you attracted to now?
Now, tall, dark, and someone that's a hard worker, because I'm a hard worker, in the household and on my job. So someone to make me laugh. Like I said, we have to have date night, and
I love that.
Someone that's into me just as much as I'm into them.
That part.
Yeah.
Yes.
That part is for real.
For real. Yes.
For real.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've already had that past relationship, where he's in the basement and I'm upstairs, and that don't work. Like we're roommates, and so,
moving around each other like furniture.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I can do it by myself. I don't need.
I don't need that. Look, if I'm gonna be lonely, let me be by myself and lonely, not in the house with somebody lonely.
Right.
Yep. I agree. I remember Tam and I have been friends probably for a couple of decades, and we have a group of other sister friends. And one in particular, she has this house, and back in the day, she used to always have a party for everything, like every weekend or whatever it was. And we would always go over there and do that. It's so funny because when you said that he's in the basement and you upstairs, it took me back to my first marriage. I got divorced. Some people were like, I didn't even know you was married, because he never came. Not that I was in the streets wilding, but because he never came around, and they just only saw me because our worlds were so separate, at some point, because he never, came into my world. I was like, well, I'm going to go over here because I didn't want to lose myself completely from my friends. And then, in case we didn't make it, then I'd be like, I don't have no friend or a man, now what do I do? So, but that's really interesting what you said, to be able to coexist and not feel like you in the basement, I'm here, and we just paying bills together.
Yeah.
Right.
I can live by myself with all of that. You know
For
what I mean?
sure.
Right.
Yeah, I don't need that. No, that's good. I love the date night idea because, we all become so busy with our lives, and, it's easy to come home and be tired and kind of disconnect sometimes, like I don't like to watch what he likes to watch all the time.
Right.
And, we have different tastes in movies and sitcoms. And sometimes we find a commonality. Other times I'll be looking at him like, why are we watching this? Why am I
Right.
You just wasting my whole life right now, But I've learned that I have to sit sometimes in his space.
Yeah, you got to give and take. So,
that part right there. That part right there. Yeah.
I tell my daughter all the time, like, you're not gonna find anyone perfect.
Oh, there is no perfection. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yep, you're gonna have faults just like he gonna have faults.
Correct.
And then sometimes those differences are good. I think it can add to some spice, because I just think I don't know how boring, at least in my brain, it would be to have someone where there is alliance on every single thing, because I'm someone, I like, to banter back and forth. I like to have a good debate. And sometimes having, I think definitely be aligned on the core things, but, definitely sometimes those differences in opinion, I think can make things, I don't know, just a little more vibrant sometimes.
Agree. Okay, so Tamala, you actually started hitting this a little bit in your earlier comments. What type of relationships did you see growing up? So that's a question for everyone, and whoever wants to go first and take on that. We kind of touched a little bit on it, but anybody want to pick up and just go with that one?
I can go. My grandparents growing up, just my grandmother just put into the relationship, and I think that's where I get a lot of my qualities from. Like, I'm gonna go hard, so I expect you to put in and and do the female, almost the female caveman mentality.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
I grew up My parents were married before I was born. They were married at 19.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, my earliest recollections are about age 5, and things seemed happy.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how happy they were always.
Yeah.
But I did as an adult, I know that there were times where I can tell as an adult, like maybe they were together, but I don't know how
Mhm.
together they were, how together
Mhm.
they were.
Mhm.
I learned some tolerance. My mom tolerated a lot that has in return made me not tolerate squat. I will raise up and over my husband's 6'3", 300.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, you will not. I don't care if I don't win. I might lose, but I'm not going to be an easy win.
Mhm.
And so I had to kind of back down and say that's not your parents.
Mm,
You are not your parents, just
yeah.
like we are not my husband's parents. I
Mhm.
think we both grew up watching some things and okay, realizing this was a bad habit of theirs. But like I told my husband, you don't pull that over into the relationship.
Mhm.
Someone kind of touched on it, talking about being in the basement, and me being upstairs. That's what my husband's parents did.
Mhm.
Daddy was in the basement, mom was upstairs, and I'm like, that's not going to work. Maybe
Mhm.
an hour a day, or maybe
Uh-huh.
a
Mhm.
day a week, but I can't do that. That again, that's that roommate
Mhm.
stage. And I
Mhm.
finally had to come to terms to him and say, look, if we're roommates, that means we're not together. And if we're not together, that means we're single. And if we're single, that means we're open to dating, right? Of
Come
course,
on.
I wouldn't, but it's like, how much or what do I have to say to get you to realize what I'm saying, or what
Mhm.
the point I'm trying to make. But yeah, I also watched growing up that my parents had to literally grow up together.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that was good, bad. I mean, they've had their rounds. They've had a time frame where they were separated, but they've been married 50 years now. So
Mhm.
it's a blessing, but it seemed like an awful lot to
Mhm.
go through. It's tiresome, and I'm not gonna say
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say I'm not all in, but I'm not gonna sacrifice me for others.
Mhm.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
You said
Mhm.
a mouthful.
That was everything. It's so
Mhm.
interesting. I definitely see the parallels. So I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I grew up where other people can still discipline your children. So I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody. Everybody had all hands on everybody. My parents were married. My father, like I said, old school dad, provider, protector. He would go to work, bring his check home, give it to my mother. She would give him an allowance, whatever that amount was, and she would pay all the bills. So my father didn't really have too many of the nuances for the household. My mother took care of all of the household. She took care of the kids. Discipline was on both of them, but if she said, "I'm gonna tell your daddy," that was a different type of a discipline thing. Um, I never saw my parents argue. I never saw my parents fight. Never in my entire life. Well, my growing up life as an adult, I've seen some things, but as growing up, I never saw them. I never saw division between them. And it's interesting because, like, in all of my relationships, I never argue. And when men think that women argue all the time. Now, I can give you some words, but I choose not to do that. One, my mouth can be wicked. So, and I don't like to say things that you really can't take back because it changes the dynamic of the entire relationship. So I'm very conscientious of that. So I don't argue. I said, let's just walk away for a little bit and we'll come back when both are on a little bit more cool headed or whatever. So I never saw my mother argue. I think that's how I'm able to do that. But in my eyesight, my mother was, I don't want to call her weak, but she was soft to me, because she just, whatever my father said was law. And she pushed for me to always have my own voice and my own opinion. And I remember one time as an adult, and I was like, why won't you say something? And for the first time in my life, I really began to look at my mother and understand why she is who she was. Um, she grew up in a household where she didn't really get a mother's love. My mother didn't really feel a lot of affection and things like that. So she tried to shower us, her children, with it. My father is not an affectionate person. So for me, my mom went through her whole life, her entire life without passion. She valued education. She valued so many things that she never got to do because she kept pouring into the children, pouring into him, pouring into whatever. And when I became an adult, anytime something in my life went wrong, whether it was a job or a relationship, I'm gone. And she says, you are a runner. She says, you never stay still. I said, because I don't have to, Mom. I don't have to. And I didn't understand what she meant when she first told me that. But later, as you get older and you put things together, and you and your mother get to the point to where you have real womanly conversation, not necessarily mother-daughter, but just woman to woman conversation.
Mhm.
I began to see her life story and understand. And I was just like, oh my God, a lot of her nonverbals, me seeing my mother not complain translated to my young child mind and into my adult relationship as don't tell the man what you want. Don't say anything because you got to be quiet, So I had this thing like, don't disrupt the peace in the house. And, it took a minute for me to say, my opinion should not disrupt the peace. It should be contributing to the liveliness of this household, right? I have a say so, and it should be heard. So seeing women, because everybody I saw had a super strong husband. I didn't see divorce until I became maybe a late teenager. I started understanding the concept of divorce. I didn't see any of that among my friends, among my family. At that point I was in the church. I didn't see anything like that. Everything was like the woman and the man stay. But I noticed nobody ever focused on the wife's happiness. Ever. None of those wives ever looked like ecstatic to be in their relationships, They were just like, he's a good provider. That's it. I always
Right.
said, he's a
Gotta
good
go along
provider.
to get along.
I was like, what
Right.
about the rest of you,
Right.
And that's when I thought, okay, I got to do something different in my life. I got to be different. I got to see differently. I was like, I don't want to just be provided for. I want to have something else, So for me, it was just seeing. I like the unity that I saw because I would never go against my husband or like that in public. I've seen him. He's been in familial situations and they might have got into some conversation. I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And I didn't say anything. But when we got in the car, he was like, do you think, I said, I think you were wrong when you said this. I said, I think you could have used something better or you could have considered this. I said, it made me uncomfortable when you said it, but he said, thank you for not calling me out in public. I said, no, I'm not going to call you out in public unless it's a safety thing and we're about to get sued and I'm involved in that. But that was you and your sisters. I ain't got nothing to do with that, right? But, I ain't going to call you out, but I am going to tell you, if you ask me and you want to know, I'm going to tell you what I thought about it. And that's the way my mother was with my father. So I do have even though I didn't like a lot of her traits, I have a lot of her traits. Her nonverbal messages to me were more powerful than her verbal lessons in life were to me.
Absolutely.
And I didn't know that.
So true. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel so much connection, to so many different points that you all share. But my grew up with both of my parents in the home. They married young. My mother was 20, my dad was 21. They passed, it's crazy, it'll be 20 years this fall. But when they passed, they had been married 36 years and knew each other their whole lives, grew up in the same community. But I kind of like you, Val, I never saw them argue. But my mother, again, she had a reckless mouth. But I think a lot of that came from her running, our family corner store, kind of being this, woman business owner, opening and closing the store. I think she had to put that armor on. And he just was kind of quiet. And I think he sometimes was maybe the go along to get along. But And they were affectionate with one another. That's definitely something I always remember, was seeing affection between the two of them. And they were affectionate and loving to the three of us. And like you were saying, Val, just once you have not those mother-daughter conversations, but those womanly discussions, and just since she has passed, even, learning more from my aunt about her, how her, my mom, and their other three siblings were raised, there wasn't any love or affection, and which kind of blew my mind, because my mom's mom was very affectionate with her grandkids, but my aunt Linda was very clear. She was like, she was like, we knew she loved us because she took care of us, she fed us, but she said she could never recall her ever saying she loved them. But I was, my parents, every night it was always a kiss on the forehead, I love you, good night, I'll see you in the morning. But again, in some of those womanly discussions with my mother, I think just her being of that generation, their future was already kind of predetermined. You get married young, you start making your families young. My father was drafted into Vietnam when my mother was pregnant with me. And I was actually born when he was in Vietnam. So there was kind of that, that gap where we lived with, and I don't know, now as I'm saying it, I'm kind of putting more pieces together where she really had to take care of herself. I mean, she was a young bride. I mean, I can't even imagine what me getting married at 20 years old would look like. Right. And then having, your husband away in the war that he didn't sign up to go to, trying to raise a baby, living in, me and her living in her bedroom that she grew up in her whole life until he came home. But I knew she had dreams to be a nurse. She wanted to go to college, but couldn't, because she was the third born in her family, but she was the oldest girl and deemed to be the more important. So my grandfather was like, you gonna take over, almost like Fred Sanford, the junkyard was the empire. Sykes Grocery and Maywood, that was the empire. Okay. So she was kind of deemed, you're going to take over, but her life dreams were something else. And I know that is what I'm sure fueled her to really pour into my sister and I very differently. The sky is the limit. Don't let no man stop you. You do what it is you need to do. But I know that was coming from a space for her of kind of dreams not realized.
Yes.
And
Raising
she wanted, and I knew she wanted very different from for us. And then also, just in some of those womanly discussions we had, just realizing, things weren't as smooth with her and my father as I thought they were, but they kept that from us. I think the only time I ever remember her losing her temper really with him, like, sometimes me and they not the smartest when it comes to making decisions. I think he decided one Christmas she needs a vacuum cleaner for Christmas.
Oh.
And Rosemary threw that vacuum cleaner down the basement stairs. I will never forget that. She got a day after Christmas, getting diamond earrings and a diamond necklace, and Eddie didn't bring no more appliances in there for Christmas or birthday.
That is funny.
So, just learning, the picture was not as, I think as rosy as maybe we thought it was. But, like you were saying, Val, like I don't think I really had awareness or connection to divorce until I was probably in my early 20s. I take that back, probably in my teens, because my mother's parents were married, came up from Mississippi. And it was, just that old school relationship. My grandmother, her job was to stay home and take care of the kids, keep the good house. My grandfather worked. But then, you start learning more about, the extracurriculars that were happening.
Outside kids.
Them outside, he had, whole family. But it was just that thought, just don't let that drama cross the threshold of the door of this house, and everything is going to be okay. And all of my aunts and uncles, I think on both sides, were married. But again, just what I know now as an adult, some of them were never happy.
And that's what you think about it. You know,
Never.
that generation, my parents were born in the 40s. So, you know, the Great Depression babies. That generation, especially the women, now the men just did whatever they wanted to do. The women honored those vows. My mother truly, my mother truly honored the vow that she said she made before God and whoever else was there.
Mhm.
I had an aunt tell me, you don't honor God and you don't honor whatever. You and your cousins always just leave. I said, it's not a matter of honoring, it's a matter of wanting to be happy and not feel
Right.
stuck at 50,
Mhm.
60, 70, and 80. And your
Right.
whole life is gone. You wake up and you haven't done anything you wanted to do, but
Mhm.
only what this
Mhm.
man wanted you to do.
Yeah,
For the
yeah,
Right.
sake
that's
of
real.
being married.
Real.
Right.
I don't need a title of Mrs. if I'm unhappy, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I meant by the caveman.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no, this is the year 2000.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. We ain't doing that no more.
Right. Nah.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, go ahead, Sharmeen. You can go ahead and finish.
Oh, I said what
Okay.
I was just, mimicking, the seeing my grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
that caveman and staying in a relationship. And
Yeah.
I didn't just walk away, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
nobody wants to be miserable and
Yeah.
torn down.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And it's so
funny.
important. Oh, I'm sorry, Val. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tam. Mm-mm.
Just being in relationship or in, connection with another person is also really having those discussions of what love in the house looked like for them. Who were their examples of what a relationship is. And Chris always laughs because I ask 1,001 questions. Like, I want to know how are arguments handled, how was this handled. And that's really important because that's the foundation that we all have been built on, and that's all we've known. And just even asking those questions about their past relationships. How did you handle conflict? How did you handle when there were moments to celebrate together? And just really, and I try to be more purposeful now and just asking those deeper questions, because I think especially for men, and more specifically for Black men, they've not always had those spaces to be safe and to be open and to really open up and share that. And that's been really interesting, in just me learning a lot more about his parents' connection, his connection to both of them. And it just really helps to connect the dots in some moments where I may want to punch him in the in the stomach, like, oh, okay, I get it. I see why maybe when I say or do something this way, it may be a little bit of a trigger. Or things are a little heated. If maybe say or do something this way, that'll help kind of bring some calm to the room.
No, I was I thought back to the day when no one even knew that I was unhappy in my first marriage, because you don't talk about it. My mother didn't talk about it. I'm sure she wasn't fulfilled in her entire life, and it's so funny. I knew on September 4th of that year that I was going to get divorced. Asked my husband if he wanted to take the lead to find the attorney. I said, I'm not taking you for anything. I don't want anything. I just want out and I just want peace. Right. And I said, this is going to be very amicable. We're going to be the model couple for divorce. This is how you do a divorce. And he says, I'll take the lead on finding the attorney. I said, all we need is one, because I trust you to do the right thing by me. And I pray that you trust me to do the right thing by you. And so October 4th came and it went. I say, it's been 30 days. How we looking? He says, I just can't pull myself to do it. I said, don't worry, I'll help you. So I found an attorney. And by November 11th of the next month, we were divorced.
Yeah, she called me and was like, guess what? I'm divorced.
No, you had called me that day. You had
You're
called
right,
me to
you're
say
right.
good morning. I was downtown. I said, hey,
You're
girl.
right. You're right.
She said, what you doing? I said, I'm going to call you back. I'm at the courthouse, get on the elevator.
Yeah, I had to
about
take
to
my
get
glasses
divorced.
off for this.
She was like, what? I said, I'm about to get divorced. I got to hang up because it's going to die. I'll call you after my divorce. And then none of my friends knew that I was getting a divorce. I was like, this is just not for me. And I'm just out, And people had asked me, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? one thing, the nonverbals my mom gave were one thing, but sometimes she'd give me some nuggets that would last forever. She
Mm-hmm.
said, when you get a belly full
Belly
of
full.
anything,
Come on.
she said, you don't have to ask nobody for no opinion. You'll know what everything is and when everything is right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my belly full, and no one knew. Even my parents didn't know, that I was getting divorced. I told them when everything was like pretty much almost finalized. And my mother was like, "Are you kidding me?" She said she thought I was joking. I was like, "No." She says, "You didn't say anything." I said, "You said when I get a belly full." I said, "My belly is real full right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. There has to be another road for me to travel. It has to be. And
Yeah.
even if I'm making a mistake and it's not, I have to do this because I'm not happy here.
Right.
I have to take that chance and roll
Yeah.
the dice.
Yeah.
I don't believe this is how, you know, in the back of my mind, I never told my mother this, but I didn't want to be my mother in her marriage.
Mm.
And that's what I saw I was becoming. But I couldn't
That's
tell
how-
her that because I would never hurt her feelings that way.
Right.
But I didn't want to be her in her marriage. And when I
That's real.
divorced my husband, my God, bless my mama. She called me and she said, "I admire you." She says, "I wish I could have been a fraction of who you are." I was like, "But you are, because you made me into this person that can stand
That you
and
are
lead.
because she was.
I am because of you, Ma." And she used to just look at me like, "I just can't believe you, my child." And I just said, "Ma, you have to not look at your life as a failure or a mistake. You have to look at the time in which you were born. You could not have been a single woman living on your own in your era. That wasn't permissible." I said it just wasn't there. I said, so even if a day came and you wanted to leave my father, there was no provisions for you to do that.
Yeah.
It was unheard of. And my father was the breadwinner. So you stay with the breadwinner,
Right.
of that time. I'm like, now, Mama, women are the breadwinners. I ain't got to
Mhm.
stay.
Right.
Whatever you put into me, it manifested the way you wanted it to. But yeah, that was interesting to me. When you were talking about that, no one knew that I was getting divorced, because it's another thing. Black people don't air their business in public. No dirty laundry. You got to keep it all quiet and tight lipped. So that's how I know for certain, and besides the things that I saw as an adult, that my mother probably was not
Yeah.
the happiest in her relationship all the time. And if she had different options that would have been offered to her, I believe maybe some of my aunts and stuff, they might have taken some different avenues.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful I had them.
Yeah, such a strength in what you in what you did, and just hearing those words of affirmation from her. I admire. I admire. I mean, that's powerful. It's
She
so.
she
so
actually
powerful.
apologized to me and said, "I'm sorry I taught you how to settle." Those were her words to me. And I was like, dang, how you answer that? I said, but it's okay. I learned my lesson, Mom. I'm not settling anymore.
That's
So
a
yeah.
whole blessing. That's a whole.
Yeah. So,
whole word,
I think
whole-
what we see definitely does affect all of us in our relationships.
Mhm.
So we have one final question before we end this conversation. How has social media and the internet affected your relationships? That's interesting.
Mhm.
It's made me grateful that I am with someone, because at this point and what I see online, I I would I'd be like,
You
been
can't do it,
there,
huh?
yeah, got the shirt, the sweat, the hoodie, and everything else. Like, I mean, I guess in one sense it's good because it's exposure. It's exposing you to things that you wouldn't necessarily know about someone prior to social media. You just have to find out after being with them for X amount of time. But then it's like, is this what it takes? I'm not, and I don't care how much weight I lose. I'm not ready to sculpt myself into be, it's sometimes it seems like guys want men to look like Barbies, or I'm not BBL. I'm not doing any of that. So if that's what it takes, then I'm just gonna stay single. And maybe that's just the younger generation and what comes in my social media feed. They seem to want, I'm not gonna say more, but it just seems like it's very off kilter to what I would be willing to give. So I guess I would say all that to say I would probably just be single.
That's real. That's real.
when I think about social media and the internet and affecting relationships, to me, it seems like more of a younger couple question. I could be wrong. I know people still do online dating and things like that, but I don't think any of it, I mean, unless, my husband is somewhere with watching 5 different fans only pages and rack up a bill he can't pay and I don't know about it. I mean, I don't know really how at this stage it could, but perhaps I'll just have a one-sided view of it. I'm not sure. Because I don't look at social media as a thing like I have to compete with these people. I'm going to do what these people are doing. Because most times I'm like, why do people tell everybody what they're doing? I don't even understand the need for doing that, right? It's just too much for me. I understand you could celebrate something and you can do that. But when people put like they whole everything on the internet, I'm like, but does anybody really care? Maybe it's just me. I'm like, it's just too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely is I think maybe a question more for younger, for younger people. I'm go on, I do post sometimes, but definitely not, I'm posting every single moment of my life. Because I, sometimes go on and I'm thinking, Lord Jesus, do you even have a moment to be able to enjoy what you're posting about? Because it's, positioning the food and taking the pictures of all of that. But if anything, like for us, like in my relationship, like he's not a really big social media person. If anything, he'll just go down the rabbit hole of looking at stupid videos, but not really posting. If anything, I think it's more just our tie and our connection to the phones. Because I know I've been someone where I'm guilty of, if my alarm clock goes off, I'm rolling over and I'm picking up my phone, even if it's just looking at the news. It may not be me going to social media, but I'm definitely trying to break that habit. Whereas, wake your ass up and journal, wake your ass up and pray, and not do that. But I think it's just that instant gratification we all have we need to always be connected to something. And I think sometimes when we have moments at home where maybe, we could just be sitting and watching a movie. And there are some times where I'm sitting and just kind of scrolling and being nosy and looking. And he might be doing the same, where it sometimes becomes a little bit of a placeholder. But again, I definitely don't look to like compare myself or compare my relationship or anything like that.
I didn't think about that part with the internet. You're right. It reminds me of old school time when people would go to breakfast and the couple would both be reading the paper at the restaurant and nobody's having a conversation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It becomes a place filler.
Anybody else have any comments about that one? How social media and or the internet affected your relationships?
No, I really think it's for, like you said, the younger crowd. I have 2 older girls that, do the dating and, inboxing. And I just think that's so weird. Like, what if they're catfishing you or they're lying, or what if that's not their picture? Like, can't you just meet people the normal way, the library or the...
No, they text their whole relationship.
Yeah, like, where'd you meet him? Oh, on the internet.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, he dropped in my DMs. What?
Right.
I know. Such a different day. Yes.
It's weird.
Such a different day. Such a different day.
Absolutely.
Did anybody have anything that they wanted to share in closing remarks, or?
No, this has been good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I look forward to having our conversation with the guys.
Yes,
like some of those comments they made.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I looked at it today and I was kind of going back, and I had like all of these things I wanted to say. But no, theirs was definitely a fiery discussion.
It was very fiery. It was funny. They had a lot of laughs. There was a lot of funny moments in there.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You could tell that they had like a 30-year friendship.
Yes.
You
And that's what I love,
tell.
because there was that banter.
Yeah.
there was that just that allegiance and lifting each
Mm-hmm.
other up and also calling each other out.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
It
they
was
had a
definitely
safe
funny.
space. Yeah, it
It
was
was
good
definitely funny.
for sure.
That was it. Well, those are the questions that they had for us to answer. So hopefully, we'll be able to figure out something where both the men and the women can get together, and that will be interesting to
Yes,
see how
indeed.
that will go. But thank each of you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your stories and for giving your views and your opinions and just your life experience to me, a complete stranger. I definitely appreciate it, and yeah, I think that's the end of this one.
Yeah, thank you all.